Hello and welcome to Wake Up with Dr. Cheryl. Wealth is the ability to fully experience life by Henry David Thoreau. I'd like to share something funny. A young boy had just gotten his driving permit. He asked his father, who was a minister, if he could discuss to use his car. His father said to him, "I'll make you a deal. You bring your grades up, study the Bible a little, and get your hair cut, and then we'll talk about it." A month later, the boy came back again and asked his father if he could use the car. His father said, "Son, I'm really proud of you. You brought your grades up and studied the Bible well, and you didn't get your hair cut." The young man waited a moment and then replied, "You know, Dad, I've been thinking about it. Samson had long hair, Moses had long hair, and Noah had long hair. Even Jesus had long hair." His father replied, "Yes, son," and they all walked everywhere they went. Wake up to your health. It is your wealth. The subject that we're going to talk about on this show is very serious. Since I decided to educate myself, I am not going to whitewash this either. After researching and listening to the expert who is going to be on this show, I feel the people seriously need to wake up about this issue. There is no wealth in our lives if you lose your mind and your mental capacity through our every breath. I'm going to say this again. There's no wealth on any level, especially our health through the very air that we breathe and the food that we eat. It won't matter how much money you have in your bank account in your pocket if you don't have your mental and physical health. My guest this evening has done so much research and with his practical experience continues to prove of what some huge corporations and extremely wealthy families are doing to control the weather and the food that we eat and especially the air we breathe. I know you've heard about Monsanto, Bill Gates' family, and the Rothschilds, and more. With this information you are about to hear, there is absolutely no doubt that you must wake up to the truth and get educated and stop this insanity. Ultimately, these are the examples of truth and that are results of addiction to control and greed on a major level. So please wake up. Our special guest this evening is Dane Wigington. This is the first segment of a two-part discussion with Dane Wigington. With this information you are about to hear, there is absolutely no doubt that you must wake up to the truth and get educated and stop this insanity. Ultimately, these are the examples of truth and that are results of addiction to control and greed on a major level. So please wake up. Our special guest this evening is Dane Wigington. This is the first segment of a two-part discussion with Dane Wigington. This is the second segment of our two-part discussion with Dane Wigington. Dane Wigington has an extensive background in solar energy. He is a former employee of Bechtel Power Corporation and was a licensed contractor in California and Arizona. His personal residence was featured in a cover article on the world's largest renewable energy magazine, Home Power. He owns a 1,600-acre wildlife preserve next to Lake Shasta in Northern California. Dane started focusing his efforts and energy on geoengineering issue when he began to lose very significant amounts of solar uptake due to ever-increasingly solar obscuration caused from the aircraft spraying, as he also noted, significant decline in forest health and began testing and research into geoengineering issue about a decade ago. He is the lead researcher for www.geoengineeringwatch.org and has investigated all levels of geoengineering, from chemtrails to HAARP, HAARP being HAARP. He assisted Michael Murphy with his production of What in the World Are They Spraying? And has appeared on an extensive number of interviews to explain the environmental dangers we face on a global level. Welcome, Dane. I know it's taken a few months for us to get to this level, but I'm grateful that we're here. And I have Kim Ireland here as well, which he was the first one that made me conscious of looking up and noticing the devastation of the chemtrails. So welcome.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thank you, Kim. Thanks for helping to sound the alarm. And again, as you see, that conveying of that message and waking Cheryl up now leads to other pebbles breaking loose and
one by one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what we all need to be doing, is sounding the alarm. Too many people have no idea the gravity of what's happening above their heads day in and day out. And the consequences of these climate engineering programs are unfolding very, very rapidly. So at this point, I think it will be difficult for them to hide the cataclysm that they have now helped to happen, and their efforts to hide it appear to be increasing as it becomes more visible. But I think we're gaining ground, Cheryl.
Well, that's a good thing. I do talk about it more often now that I've been more educated about this, and watching your videos and reading your blogs, etc. I wish there was a magic button or a magic word that would wake people up to really look at this and take this seriously and not deny what is going on. I think maybe it's overwhelming for some people to really grasp the reality, and maybe that's why they're not. Please step in. I'm.
No, I think you're right. You're exactly right. This is so threatening to people's paradigm of reality that they simply refuse to see it. And the elephant in the room couldn't be any bigger at this point. We have the entire science community talking about it, describing exactly what we see in the sky, using the exact materials we're getting on the ground, materials that match about 150 patents for geoengineering exactly. You have administration officials like John Holder in the Obama administration saying that we're definitely going to need to implement these programs. And yet, with all that mountain of data, and clearly these programs visibly going on in our skies, clearly aircraft that are spraying one day, not the next, people still choose to accept the official narrative, which is go back to sleep. What you see is not really what you see. It's nothing. It's harmless. We would never do that to you. And they buy this after, how many countless examples of our government doing unspeakable things, even to their own troops. Even when we have depleted uranium in the Gulf, for example, the government encourages us to put our support the troop stickers all over our cars, and they're using depleted uranium, which is contaminating our soldiers forever, along with native populations, Agent Orange. Where would we start? So anybody who feels the government wouldn't do this to them has simply got their head in the sand.
Well, and it perpetuates too with the aluminum particulates that we're ingesting on whatever, whether we're breathing it, we're eating it, whatever. It's like it's perpetuating the ones to stay, until they really wake up, and it's perpetuating it, and denial.
It is.
Or staying asleep.
You're correct. What we're being exposed to is all bioaccumulative. It's building up in our systems, period. These are bioavailable materials, and they're bioaccumulative. So they are building up in us and the environment, and denial won't hide anybody from the ramifications. We see statistics, Alzheimer's and dementia. Now 1 in 3 seniors in the continental US dies with one of those two ailments, not from it, but with it. And we have soil sterilization going on across the planet at this point. In Northern California, we can hardly grow anything. We have, to go over the full ramifications again, a disrupted hydrological cycle, contamination of everything, shredded ozone layer. This is the greatest single all-out assault against life on Earth, bar none. The only thing that could exceed the decimation being caused by climate engineering, Cheryl and Kim, is nuclear catastrophe, and we are certainly watching some of that unfold right now as well. But the argument I've always made in this regard that puts still climate engineering as a top priority, that we will never be able to deal with Fukushima or the rest of the nuclear catastrophes that are coming if we can't think cognitively and clearly. And if we continue to absorb these particulates, that will be the case with all of us. We won't face any challenge. We won't be in a fit enough condition or a mentally sound enough condition to face any challenge.
And that's why when I first heard about Dr. Blaylock, I listened to his video is teaching about how to counteract the aluminum particulates, and I started taking it myself about a month ago, saffron, to block the aluminum that goes into your brain. I mean, that's my understanding. So, you know, I keep telling people, you know, in the meantime, you've got to protect yourself.
We need to try. And certainly even other elements, lithium has some very profound protective qualities.
Is that
for the
lithium
brain.
orotate? Lithium orotate? Do you know?
Yes. And those, when people, they think of lithium, of course, they think of the massive doses for certain psychological applications where people are dragging their feet. This is a very small dose. In fact, lithium, I believe 5 milligrams is the dose you can buy in your health food store. Lithium is, for the most part, leached out of our diet now. So it's an essential element, and it has very profound qualities in protecting the brain from aluminum specifically. So in conjunction with Dr. Blaylock's recommendations, the blue-green algae, all of this is important. So it's important to protect ourselves, but in the meantime, we must stop the exposure, or eventually our systems will succumb. And the paradox here is you have a climate science community that is lying profusely by omission by not including climate engineering first and foremost in any climate discussion. You cannot legitimately discuss the state of the climate without discussing the biggest wrench in the works of all, climate engineering. Not the only one, but I certainly want to stress that. So on one side of the fence, you have a climate science community that is lying by omission by not first and foremost including climate engineering. On the other side of the fence, you have an anti-geoengineering activist community that has convinced themselves there's nothing wrong with the climate, that it's all a hoax, that putting 90 million tons of CO2 in the atmosphere every day is not a problem. And so they discredit part of our movement by not acknowledging that as a damaging factor in addition to the climate engineering. So the two sides need to both pull their heads out of the sand and come together.
So what do you think, like, for the viewers? I'm really trying to approach this from a grassroots level so people can really get it. And, you know, what can we do? What can the viewers do? What can the listeners do to take action against this, to stop this insanity?
The first thing I'd recommend everybody do is you have to face your fears. You have to face this issue and know what it's about, know the ramifications. And an example I use a lot because it's very, very telling is that if you're standing in the middle of a freeway, you're better off facing traffic. You have a better chance. And this is the situation here. Too many people want to think happy thoughts and not face the problem. And I'm all for some optimism and hope. But at the same time, you have to face reality. So people need to do that first. Educate yourself on this issue so you know what it's about. Then people should never underestimate their own power in affecting the equation. It's astounding how many people have been convinced they have no power. They have no ability to affect the equation. This is just simply a lie. Anybody listening, anybody watching right now to this show could be the individual who puts the break in the dam, that starts the breach in the dam that blows this whole thing wide open. Any one of your viewers could be that person, and it's up to all of us to try. And so if the farmers knew, if they really understood that this is why it's not raining, how mad do you think they would be? I think they would be livid, and we need to wake them up. All of us can help in this area.
The fact that there are so many, I keep seeing it over and over, the dying fish, the dying species, the dying in the oceans, you know, the different species that are disappearing because of the contamination. It's just overwhelming to me. It's so evident. And you know, I guess they just need to keep being fed the reaction or the proof of the contamination before it's too late.
Yes, again, every day counts in this battle. And right now, you have governmental agencies that the public has been led to believe are there to protect them. And that couldn't be further from the truth. We have government agencies now that are simply paid liars. And their job is to convince the public nothing is happening when all hell is breaking loose.
How can we fix that, Dane? You know, I know that you deal with governmental agencies, you know, you keep attempting to do that. It's like it's got to get to that level so the sheeple, excuse my expression, but the sheeple, the followers, will go accordingly, you know? I mean,
You have to hold these people accountable. Your point is valid. They must be held accountable, and that even by people who know them. I mean, once individuals are identified in anybody's own community, and certainly they have common friends, family, they need to be held accountable. They need to be looked at in the eye and asked how it is they are able to look themselves in the mirror. And we have a website now called Disinformation Directory, so that when there's really a glaring example of somebody lying for the establishment, it's disinformationdirectory.com. So what we are doing there now is when, for example, we have a NASA employee putting out a program to teach children that these trails in the sky are harmless for them, that is absolutely inexcusable. So our goal now is to spotlight that person, mail them an email link back of their expose on our site, and let them know we're putting their public email out for the general population so that everybody can let them know how they feel and that they are not going to do this with impunity, and that we will hold them when this is out in the open as accomplices to this crime.
right.
So that they can't do this under the radar anymore. And I had an encounter with a USDA employee very high up on the ladder that I know a few days ago, and certainly I've given him enough data over the years. There's no excuse for him still continuing to deny this issue, and that was my point with him, that, you know, this is not okay. It's not okay for you to continue to lie about something so incredibly dire in order to protect your job. Same with Sierra Club, and I'm astounded at the willingness of the so-called environmental groups, and nobody is more concerned about the environment than me. I mean, I've worked for I don't know how many years in the forest trying to restore habitat, and bottom line is, head of Sierra Club, I've given mountains of data over the last few years, he has absolutely no moral compass. He just wants to stay in his comfort zone. This is the head of the Sierra Club for Northern California, and I'm not worried about any
Recourse.
repercussions of criticism.
Dane,
Yes.
did you say that's misinformation.com?
This
Okay.
Disinformationdirectory.com.
Oh,
disinformation.
Okay.
Disinformationdirectory.com.
I want to make sure that I get that on the film, you know?
So we see Sierra Club, ETC Group, Greenpeace, WWF, all of them pretending, just like all the federal agencies, that nothing's going on in our skies. This is absolutely inexcusable. And again, what people need to understand, we have to prioritize. The ship is going down. It's absolutely going down. And I'll elaborate on the fish die-offs, which you just mentioned. Same thing, agencies there are lying about that issue, pretending they don't know what it's from when they know exactly what it's from. We have radically warming oceans, and now we have gassing occurring on the seafloor. And this gassing is CH4, methane, also hydrogen sulfide. It deoxygenates water. The warmer water also carries much less oxygen, and that's what kills that many fish that quickly. Radiation does not kill that many fish at that speed. Any other forms of pollution would be readily evident. This is gassing, and it's occurring all over the globe. Why? Because the oceans are warming radically fast. And this is where, again, so many of the anti-geoengineering community that looks at an engineered cooling event like what just happened, I believe, in Bolivia. I think there was some deaths in Bolivia, and they just had an engineered cool down there, just like they had in the Dakotas last October. It killed 100,000 cattle. Same type of engineered cool down, endothermic reaction against the animals' hides. The anti-geoengineering community will look at that and call it a proof of global cooling, which is exactly what the geoengineers would want them to say. That's like saying geoengineering works, we should do it. I mean, when people don't recognize that for what it is, an engineered event, that's helping the geoengineers to sell geoengineering. So in the case of the oceans, when the oceans are warming so quickly, and a cubic meter of seawater, people should listen to this, a cubic meter of seawater contains 4,000 times the thermal energy of a cubic meter of air. The ocean temperatures are all that matters, and they're going through the roof. So they can engineer a cool down here and there above water. All that matters is how warm the water is, and it's off the charts. So there'll be no hiding the warming for much longer. And the rub is geoengineering is not making it better, but making it exponentially worse.
Dane, is there an agency or some avenue that we can go that is like an arm above geoengineering?
In order to sound the alarm,
Yes. I mean, I mean,
those that run the geoengineering programs are at the top of the ladder. We're talking about the same people who print the money. This is a question that's often asked: who's paying for it?
oh God.
And that's asked by people who don't understand the system at this point. I mean, as the dollar is the reserve currency, it has given the empire all the money it can print, literally.
This is
And
what
now that we see countries disconnecting from the dollar, which will eventually
Yes.
affect the geoengineering programs here as well, that starts to tear the pillars out from underneath the empire. That's why Saddam was taken down. That's a primary reason. He also had oil there. I mean, certainly there after that. That's why Gaddafi in Libya was disconnecting from the dollar. That's the situation with Iran. And right now,
China.
you have...
I read yesterday that China and Russia are going together to stop using the dollar.
They did. They just signed a $400 million
Yeah.
trade deal.
Yeah.
$400 billion energy deal. The BRIC countries are all disconnecting. They've had enough. The empire is totally off the rails. And, you know, it's not to say that China or Russia, if they had the same amount of power, might be behaving in the same manner. They probably would. But the fact is right now, the big bully in the block is the U.S. and the NATO powers, and they're behaving absolutely atrociously. You know, the situation in Ukraine, which is about resources as well. And if you look at pictures now, Cheryl, whether it's news footage from anywhere in Europe, South America, you almost never see a clear sky. Almost never. It's this diffuse looking light. Sky's full of trails. If you get a clear shot of the sky, I think Allegra, Weather Channel has a sponsor. It's Allegra for the allergy medication for kids. And the last scene in the Allegra commercial is a man holding a kid up to the sky, and there's a big giant X above the kid. Is that an accident? I don't think so. So, you know, it's this sort of twisted power structure, secret society insanity that makes a game out of all this, just like they do with dates and when certain things happen like 9/11. I mean, that people, if they can drop buildings in front of our face to the ground, clearly demo, in Building 7, the most astounding example, that dropped in 9 seconds with nothing hitting it from some office furniture burning on the first floor. If this is the case, if high-rise buildings fall to the ground in free fall speed from some chairs and couches burning on the first floor, we should all be paralyzed if somebody lights a cigarette up in a steel structure high-rise. So if they can do this, they know they can spray above us. They know they can do anything, and most people will try to believe the official narrative. So again, in the case of the spraying, people forget 9/11 because it's gone. It's an event that's not affecting them. That's not the case with the spraying. The spraying is affecting every one of us every minute of every day with every breath we take. This cannot be ignored, period.
No.
And this issue is a priority for me, again, because I feel, and the data supports this conclusion, if we do not deal with geoengineering, if the climate engineering is not stopped, it's game over. It's that simple. And that's even without changing the mix. And people should be alarmed enough to know how much biological experimentation our country has done on its own citizens. These are documented cases. I challenge anybody to look it up. If we know they're spraying above us right now, what's to keep the power structure if the public becomes too aware and too hard to control? What's to keep them from changing the mix, putting something a little more lethal in there, and we're all done right then?
Oh, God.
I mean,
What
this
a
is not
horrible
alarmism.
thought.
This is just simple reality, looking at history and the direction we're traveling.
That is just horrifying to me, to even think that they would go that far.
Dane, can you
Yes.
discuss the ozone layer a little bit and the impact that the aluminum's having on it?
That's a very good point, Kim. Very good point, because this is something people should notice. And the only reason they're not noticing is because they feel somebody would tell them if there was a problem. And they should know by now that couldn't be further from the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The ozone layer is being shredded. It's so damaged at this point. It's literally frying the bark off of trees. It's causing the trees to defoliate and drop limbs so that the limbs die off. You'll see a lot of dead limbs now in most trees. They have much less foliage than the historical norm. You can find a great deal of trees with the bark literally burnt off the southwest side. We see 50, 60 foot high native oaks in our region now with a strip of bark fried off the southwest side. This is astonishing damage. And we
What more
know, we're
proof
not
do you
guessing on
need,
the
right?
ozone layer damage. Some simple facts, Kim. Anything in the atmosphere in the way of particulates damages ozone, period. A volcano damages ozone, period, because of the particulate matter it puts up. So when you have jets circling the globe 24/7, dumping, in some cases with the military tankers, perhaps 100-ton payload of these particulates, it's decimating the ozone layer. So we knew it was bad, and we knew that this was a direct result of the climate engineering. But when we started metering, we were truly astounded. We're metering now with state-of-the-art meters. We're seeing UVB levels that are at minimum 1,200% higher than we're being told.
I'll leave you with this. Please wake up to the truth of what is going on right in your front yard and backyard, on our planet, and right here in our own yard, California. Look at the crises of water, contaminated, compromised food, and air we breathe. Never give up. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing in your life, work with integrity and have a positive attitude. First and foremost, with your family and friends. First, be aware and conscious of the negative thoughts and catch yourself before they come out of your mouth. Be grateful for who you are and where you come from and what you have, and be grateful for your freedom, and eat healthy. Good nutrition feeds the mind and your body temple. Don't forget to exercise. Feed your spirituality with meditation and prayer. Thank God with unconditional love. Love yourself unconditionally. Stop criticizing, judging, and allowing others to dominate the way you feel and think about yourself. Be compassionate and share your abundance and wealth with others. When fear knocks, let faith answer the door. Money's like love. It kills slowly and painfully. The one who withholds it and enlivens the other, who turns it on his fellow man. Thank you for Marin TV for facilitating this show, and especially to my crew, Brad, Eric, Jack. Please support and become a member of Marin TV. Bye for now, until next time.